The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone courtyard of the embassy compound in London. Ambassador Viktor Petrov adjusted his military uniform one final time before stepping out of his black sedan. Today marked his first official visit to meet the British diplomatic staff, and he wanted everything to be perfect. The crisp autumn air filled his lungs as he surveyed the impressive building that would serve as the backdrop for this important diplomatic exchange. Victor had served his country for over 20 years, climbing through the ranks of both military and diplomatic service. His chest bore numerous medals from his time as a young officer, and his reputation for strict protocol had earned him respect across international circles. At 52, his graying temples and stern expression commanded attention wherever he went. He believed deeply that proper military courtesy formed the foundation of all successful diplomatic relationships. The British embassy staff had prepared meticulously for this visit. Security personnel positioned themselves at strategic points throughout the grounds, while diplomatic aides reviewed the scheduled proceedings one final time. The visit represented more than just a formal introduction between two nations. Recent tensions in international waters had made this meeting particularly significant, and both sides understood the weight of making a positive first impression. As Victor approached the main entrance, he noticed the precision with which the British guards maintained their positions. Two members of the Queen's Guard stood motionless at the embassy gates, their red tunics and black bearskin hats creating an impressive display of British military tradition. Their rifles remained perfectly positioned, and their faces showed no emotion, despite the gathering crowd of onlookers who had come to witness the diplomatic ceremony. The ambassador's military training had instilled in him a deep respect for the traditions and protocols of other nations. He had studied British customs extensively in preparation for this assignment, understanding that successful diplomacy often depended on showing proper respect for local traditions and military heritage. His own country's military customs emphasized the importance of acknowledging the service and dedication of fellow soldiers, regardless of nationality. Victor's aide, a young diplomatic officer named Elena, walked beside him carrying important documents for the meeting. She had worked with the ambassador for 3 years and had never seen him nervous before an official function. However, she noticed a slight tension in his shoulders as they approached the guards. The significance of this moment was not lost on either of them, as the success of future diplomatic relations could very well depend on how well this initial meeting proceeded. The British diplomatic staff waited inside the building, led by Deputy Ambassador Margaret Thornfield, a seasoned diplomat with over 15 years of experience in international relations. She had dealt with officials from Victor's country before, and understood the importance they placed on military protocol and ceremony. Her team had briefed her thoroughly on the ambassador's background and his military service record, hoping to establish common ground that would facilitate productive discussions. As the group moved closer to the guards, Victor reflected on his own military service and the countless times he had stood at attention, representing his nation with pride and discipline. He understood the weight of responsibility these young guards carried, maintaining their post while representing centuries of British military tradition. The moment demanded recognition of their dedication and service. The onlookers began to gather more closely, sensing that something significant was about to unfold. Among them were local residents, tourists with cameras, and even some members of the press who had heard about the high-level diplomatic visit. The atmosphere grew increasingly charged with anticipation as the ambassador's group reached the final approach to the embassy entrance. Victor paused briefly, his experienced eye taking in every detail of the scene before him. The guards remained perfectly still, their training evident in every aspect of their bearing and presentation. The weight of military tradition and diplomatic protocol converged in this single moment, creating an opportunity that would either strengthen international relations or create an unfortunate misunderstanding. The morning light reflected off the polished brass buttons of both the ambassador's uniform and the guard's ceremonial dress, creating a visual reminder of the military heritage that connected soldiers across national boundaries. Victor felt the familiar stirring of military pride that had driven his career for 2 decades. In that moment, he made a decision that would transform a routine diplomatic visit into something far more meaningful and memorable for everyone present. Without hesitation, Ambassador Viktor Petrov came to a complete stop 3 meters from the guards. His military training took over as he straightened his shoulders and brought his feet together in perfect alignment. The crowd's murmur died down to complete silence as everyone sensed something extraordinary was about to happen. Elena, his aide, stopped beside him, unsure of what was unfolding but trusting in her superior's judgment completely. Victor raised his right hand in a crisp, precise military salute. The gesture was flawless, executed with the same attention to detail he had learned as a young cadet decades earlier. His hand formed the perfect angle, his arm remained steady, and his eyes focused directly ahead with unwavering respect. This was not merely a diplomatic courtesy, but a genuine soldier's acknowledgement of fellow warriors who served their nation with honor. The salute held deeper meaning than most observers could understand. In Victor's military tradition, such a gesture represented recognition of shared sacrifice, dedication, and the brotherhood that exists among all who wear their nation's uniform. He was not simply greeting the guards as a foreign official meeting local security personnel. Instead, he was paying tribute to their service as one soldier honoring others, transcending national boundaries through mutual respect. The guards, trained to remain motionless during ceremonial duties, faced an unexpected moment that their extensive preparation had not specifically covered. Their orders were clear about maintaining position and composure during official visits, but this particular situation created a unique challenge. The foreign ambassador's gesture was clearly one of respect and military courtesy, not a security threat or diplomatic provocation that required intervention. Guard James Mitchell, a 24-year-old soldier from Manchester, had served with the Queen's Guard for 2 years. He had maintained his position through countless ceremonies, state visits, and public events without breaking protocol once. His training had prepared him for dealing with tourist interruptions, weather challenges, and even occasional hostile encounters. However, nothing in his experience had prepared him for this moment of genuine military respect from a high-ranking foreign officer. Standing beside Mitchell was Guard David Roberts, a 26-year-old veteran who had served tours in Afghanistan before joining the ceremonial unit. His combat experience had given him a deeper understanding of military brotherhood and the bonds that connect soldiers across different armies. Roberts recognized immediately that the ambassador's salute carried the weight of authentic military tradition and deserved appropriate acknowledgement. The silence stretched for what felt like minutes, but was actually only seconds. The crowd held its breath, uncertain about what they were witnessing but sensing its importance. Photographers began quietly adjusting their cameras, instinctively recognizing that this moment might capture something special. The tension was palpable as everyone waited to see how the guards would respond to this unexpected display of military courtesy. Elena watched her ambassador maintain his salute with unwavering steadiness, admiring his commitment to the gesture regardless of whether it would be returned. She understood that Victor's military background often influenced his diplomatic approach, but she had never seen him make such a bold departure from standard protocol. Her respect for him grew as she realized he was willing to risk potential embarrassment to honor the service of these British soldiers. Inside the embassy, Deputy Ambassador Thornfield had been alerted to the situation developing at the entrance. She moved quickly to a window where she could observe the scene unfolding outside. Her diplomatic experience told her that this moment could either become a wonderful story of international cooperation or an awkward incident that would require careful management. Much would depend on how the guards chose to respond. The morning breeze stirred slightly, causing the flags above the embassy to flutter gently. The sound seemed amplified in the unusual quiet that had settled over the courtyard. Victor remained perfectly still, his salute held with the precision that had been drilled into him through years of military discipline. His commitment to the gesture demonstrated his genuine belief in the importance of recognizing military service wherever it was. Found tourist Sarah Williams from Australia had been taking photos of the colorful guards when the ambassador's arrival interrupted her sightseeing. She found herself unexpectedly witnessing what felt like a significant historical moment. Without fully understanding the military protocols involved, she sensed the gravity of the situation and instinctively lowered her camera out of respect for what was happening. The guards' dilemma intensified with each passing second. Their training emphasized maintaining position and composure above all else. But their military heritage also taught them the importance of returning proper military courtesies when offered by fellow soldiers. The ambassador's gesture was clearly authentic and respectful, creating a situation that demanded careful judgment, rather than rigid adherence to standard operating procedures. Both guards felt the weight of representing their nation and their military tradition in this unexpected moment. Their response would be observed by their superiors, recorded by cameras, and potentially remembered as either an example of appropriate military courtesy or a breach of ceremonial protocol. The decision they made would reflect not only on themselves but on the entire institution they represented with such pride and dedication. Guard David Roberts made the first move. His military instincts, honed through combat experience and years of ceremonial duty, told him that this moment transcended standard protocol. Slowly and deliberately, he brought his rifle to the present arms position, the traditional military response to a salute from a superior officer or foreign dignitary. The movement was fluid and precise, executed with the same attention to detail that characterized every aspect of his guard duties. The crowd gasped softly as they witnessed this departure from the guard's usual motionless stance. Roberts's action was not a violation of his orders, but rather an interpretation of them that honored both his ceremonial responsibilities and the broader traditions of military courtesy. His response acknowledged the ambassador's gesture while maintaining the dignity and precision expected of the Queen's Guard. Guard James Mitchell watched his partner's response and immediately understood the appropriate course of action. Without hesitation, he too brought his rifle to the present arms position, creating a synchronized display of military respect that elevated the entire scene. The two guards stood in perfect formation, their movements complementing each other with the precision that only comes from extensive training and shared understanding of military tradition. Ambassador. Victor felt a surge of emotion as the guards returned his salute in their traditional manner. The moment validated his decision to offer the initial gesture and demonstrated that military respect could bridge cultural and national differences. He maintained his salute for the appropriate duration before bringing his hand down in a crisp, controlled movement that matched the precision of the guard's response. The crowd burst into spontaneous applause, recognizing that they had witnessed something special, even if they didn't fully understand all the military protocols involved. The applause was respectful rather than boisterous, as if the observers understood that they had been privileged to see a moment of genuine military brotherhood that transcended politics and nationalism. Elena felt tears forming in her eyes as she watched this display of mutual respect between soldiers of different nations. Her diplomatic training had taught her about the importance of cultural sensitivity and international cooperation, but she had never seen such principles demonstrated so powerfully in a single spontaneous moment. She knew that this scene would be remembered long after the formal diplomatic meetings had been forgotten. Deputy Ambassador Thornfield smiled from her window, recognizing immediately that this exchange had accomplished more for international relations than hours of formal negotiations might achieve. The genuine nature of the moment, the respect shown by both sides, and the positive response from the watching crowd created exactly the kind of goodwill that successful diplomacy required. She made a mental note to ensure that this incident was properly documented and shared with her superiors. Photographer James Patterson, who worked for a local newspaper, had been assigned to cover the routine diplomatic visit. He found himself capturing what he immediately recognized as a front-page story. His camera clicked rapidly as he documented the salute, the guard's response, and the crowd's reaction. Years of experience told him that these images would be widely shared and remembered as an example of international cooperation at its finest. The guards slowly returned their rifles to the normal position, their movements as precise and coordinated as their initial response had been. They resumed their motionless stance, but something had changed in their bearing. The brief exchange had reminded them of the honor inherent in their service, and the respect that their dedication earned from fellow soldiers around the world. Victor nodded respectfully to the guards before continuing toward the embassy entrance. His step seemed lighter, and his expression showed a satisfaction that went beyond mere diplomatic courtesy. The successful exchange had set a positive tone for the entire visit and demonstrated that his commitment to military traditions could enhance rather than complicate his diplomatic responsibilities. As the group moved away from the guards, the crowd began to disperse, but the conversation continued. People shared their impressions of what they had witnessed, many expressing surprise at the guards' response and admiration for the ambassador's initial gesture. The story began spreading immediately through social media posts and word of mouth, carrying the positive message of international respect and cooperation to a much wider audience. The guards returned to their vigilant watch, but the morning's events had added new meaning to their ceremonial duties. They stood a little straighter, knowing that their service had been recognized and honored by a distinguished foreign officer who understood the importance of military tradition. Their dedication to representing their nation with honor had been validated in a way that formal ceremonies rarely achieved. Local resident Mary Chen, who walked past the embassy every morning on her way to work, had stopped to watch the diplomatic arrival. She found herself moved by the simple dignity of the exchange and the way it demonstrated that respect and courtesy could bridge any cultural divide. She would tell her family about this scene over dinner, spreading the story of how two nations' military traditions had created a moment of unexpected beauty and connection. Inside the embassy, the formal diplomatic meetings proceeded with an atmosphere of warmth and mutual respect that might not have existed without the morning's spontaneous display of military courtesy. Deputy Ambassador Thornfield found that Ambassador Victor was more relaxed and open than she had expected, and their discussions flowed naturally from topic to topic. The positive energy from the entrance ceremony seemed to have created a foundation of goodwill that benefited every aspect of their diplomatic exchange. During a break in the meetings, Victor shared the story of his military service with his British counterparts. He spoke about his early days as a young officer, the lessons he had learned about leadership and honor, and his belief that military traditions provided a universal language that could connect people across cultural boundaries. His colleagues listened with genuine interest, finding common ground in their own experiences with military protocol and ceremony. Meanwhile, outside the embassy, the story of the morning's events continued to spread. Several people who had witnessed the exchange posted videos and photos on social media, accompanied by captions praising both the ambassador's gesture and the guard's response. The posts quickly gained attention from users around the world who were touched by this display of international respect and military. Brotherhood Guard David Roberts found it difficult to concentrate on his remaining hours of duty. The morning's events kept replaying in his mind, reminding him of why he had chosen to serve his country and how his service connected him to a larger community of soldiers and veterans worldwide. He thought about his friends who were currently deployed overseas and how much it would mean to them to receive similar recognition for their dedication and sacrifice. The commanding officer of the Guard unit, Major William Harrison, received a report about the morning's incident within hours of its occurrence. Rather than viewing it as a breach of protocol, he recognized it as an excellent example of how his soldiers could adapt to unexpected situations while maintaining the dignity and honor of their position. He made plans to commend both guards for their professional response to an unusual diplomatic moment. News outlets began picking up the story by afternoon, with several major newspapers and television stations requesting interviews and additional information. The timing was perfect, as the public was eager for positive news stories that demonstrated international cooperation and mutual respect. The simple gesture of military courtesy became a symbol of hope that nations could work together despite political differences. Ambassador Victor's afternoon schedule included meetings with trade representatives and cultural attachés, but he found that every conversation began with discussion of the morning's events at the embassy entrance. His colleagues praised his gesture and expressed admiration for the guard's response, noting that such moments of genuine diplomacy were rare in their experience. The story enhanced his reputation and opened doors that might otherwise have remained closed. Elena spent part of her afternoon fielding phone calls from journalists and diplomatic contacts who wanted to learn more about the ambassador's background and motivations. She found herself serving as an unofficial spokesperson for a story that had captured international attention far beyond what anyone had anticipated. Her pride in serving with Victor grew as she saw how his commitment to military traditions had created such positive diplomatic momentum. The guards' families learned about their son's moment of recognition through news reports and social media posts. Roberts's mother called him that evening, expressing her pride in how he had handled the unusual situation. Mitchell's father, a retired Army sergeant, sent a text message saying that the family was proud to see military traditions properly honored by the next generation. Local businesses near the embassy reported increased foot traffic as people came hoping to see the guards who had been featured in the news stories. Tour guides began including the morning's events in their narratives about British military tradition and international diplomacy. The embassy entrance became an unofficial stop for visitors who wanted to experience the location where such a positive moment had occurred. The story reached military personnel serving around the world, many of whom shared it with their colleagues and families. Soldiers appreciated seeing their service recognized and honored, while veterans found themselves remembering moments from their own careers when military courtesy had bridged cultural divides. The ambassador's gesture resonated particularly strongly with those who understood the deep traditions behind such formal military recognition. By evening, hashtags related to the morning's events were trending on multiple social media platforms. People from different countries shared their own stories of positive interactions with foreign military personnel, creating a broader conversation about international cooperation and the universal values that connect service members regardless of nationality. The British Ministry of Defense issued a statement praising the Guards' professional response and noting that such moments demonstrated the high quality of training and judgment possessed by ceremonial Guard units. The statement emphasized that military courtesy and international respect were fundamental values that transcended political differences and contributed to positive diplomatic relations between nations. 3 days after the incident, Ambassador Victor received an unexpected invitation that would transform his diplomatic mission into something far more meaningful. Major Harrison, the commanding officer of the Guard unit, requested a private meeting to discuss the morning's events and their impact on his soldiers. The invitation came through official diplomatic channels, but the tone was warm and personal, indicating that this would be more than just a routine courtesy call. Victor arrived at the Guard headquarters with Elena, both curious about the purpose of the meeting. Major Harrison greeted them with the same military precision that had characterized the Guard's response at the embassy, but his manner was relaxed and welcoming. He led them to his office where the walls displayed photographs documenting the unit's long history and distinguished service to the Crown. The Major began by explaining how the Guard's response to Victor's salute had affected not just the 2 soldiers involved but the entire unit. He described how the story had spread through their ranks, inspiring discussions about the meaning of military service and the connections that exist between soldiers of different nations. The positive response from the public and the media had reinforced the Guard's pride in their ceremonial duties and their role as representatives of British military tradition. Victor listened with growing amazement as Harrison described the ripple effects of that brief moment at the embassy entrance. He had intended simply to show respect for fellow soldiers, not to create a story that would inspire military personnel around the world. The Major shared letters and messages that had arrived from veterans, active duty personnel, and even civilian supporters who had been touched by the display of international military courtesy. Harrison then made an extraordinary proposal that took Victor completely by surprise. He invited the ambassador to participate in a special ceremony that would formally recognize the positive impact of the morning's events on diplomatic relations and military cooperation. The ceremony would include the 2 Guards who had responded to his salute, their commanding officers, and representatives from both nations' diplomatic corps. Elena could barely contain her excitement as she realized the historic significance of this invitation. In her years of diplomatic service, she had never heard of a foreign ambassador being invited to participate in a British military ceremony as a gesture of appreciation and respect. The proposal represented a level of international cooperation that rarely occurred outside of formal treaties and state visits. The ceremony would take place at the embassy, allowing the Guards to be recognized in the same location where they had demonstrated such professional excellence. Harrison explained that the event would celebrate not just the specific incident, but the broader principles of military honor, international respect, and diplomatic courtesy that it had represented. Media coverage would help spread the positive message even further. Victor accepted the invitation immediately, understanding that this ceremony would provide an opportunity to strengthen the diplomatic relationships he had been sent to build. The event would demonstrate to both nations' citizens that their military personnel and diplomatic representatives shared common values of honor, service, and mutual respect that transcended political boundaries. Preparations for the ceremony began immediately, with staff from both the embassy and the guard unit working together to ensure that every detail would honor both nations' traditions appropriately. The collaboration itself became an example of the international cooperation that the original incident had inspired, with British and foreign personnel finding creative ways to blend their respective ceremonial practices. The guards, Roberts and Mitchell, learned about the upcoming ceremony with a mixture of pride and nervousness. They had never expected their professional response to a diplomatic courtesy to result in such recognition. Their families began making plans to attend the event, understanding that their sons would be representing not just their unit but the finest traditions of British military service. News of the planned ceremony generated even more international attention than the original incident had received. Diplomatic correspondents recognized the unusual nature of the event and began analyzing its potential impact on future international relations. Military analysts praised the innovative approach to celebrating shared values and building bridges between different nations' armed forces. Victor spent several hours each day responding to messages from colleagues around the world who had heard about the ceremony and wanted to express their support for this new model of diplomatic engagement. Many noted that his approach demonstrated how military traditions could enhance rather than complicate civilian diplomatic efforts, creating opportunities for connection that purely political negotiations might miss. The embassy staff worked overtime to accommodate the increased interest in the ceremony, fielding requests from media outlets, diplomatic missions, and military organizations that wanted to attend or provide coverage. What had begun as a simple recognition of two guards, professionalism had evolved into an international celebration of the values that unite military personnel across national boundaries. Elena coordinated with her counterparts in the British diplomatic service to ensure that the ceremony would appropriately honor both the specific incident and the broader principles it represented. She found the British diplomats eager to collaborate, recognizing that this event could serve as a model for future international cooperation and cultural exchange between their nations. The ceremony took place on a crisp morning exactly 1 week after the original incident, with autumn sunlight streaming across the embassy courtyard where everything had begun. A small but distinguished crowd gathered to witness this unprecedented celebration of international military courtesy and diplomatic cooperation. Representatives from both nations' military and diplomatic services stood alongside family members, media personnel, and local residents who had requested permission to attend. Ambassador Victor arrived wearing his full dress uniform, its medals and decorations gleaming in the morning light. He carried himself with the same military bearing that had characterized his original salute, but his expression showed a warmth and satisfaction that reflected the week's remarkable developments. Elena walked beside him, carrying the official documents that would formalize the diplomatic significance of the ceremony. Guards Roberts and Mitchell stood at attention in their ceremonial positions, their red tunics and bearskin hats creating the same impressive display that had provided the backdrop for the original exchange. However, today they would step away from their usual motionless stance to participate actively in a ceremony designed to honor their professional excellence and diplomatic sensitivity. Major Harrison opened the ceremony with remarks that praised both the ambassador's gesture and the guard's response as examples of the highest traditions of military service and international cooperation. He noted that their actions had demonstrated how individual soldiers could contribute to diplomatic relations through their professionalism, judgment, and commitment to honor. The major's words carried special weight because they came from an officer who understood both military traditions and their broader significance. Deputy Ambassador Thornfield spoke next, describing how the morning's events had enhanced the diplomatic relationship between the two nations and created opportunities for cooperation that might not otherwise have existed. She praised Ambassador Victor for his leadership in demonstrating that military traditions could strengthen rather than complicate civilian diplomatic efforts. Her remarks emphasized the lasting impact that moments of genuine respect could have on international relations. The centerpiece of the ceremony was a formal exchange of commendations that recognized all participants for their contributions to diplomatic cooperation. Victor received a certificate acknowledging his role in promoting international understanding through military courtesy. The guards received commendations for their professional response to an unexpected situation and their representation of the finest traditions of British military service. As the formal presentations concluded, Victor requested permission to address the gathering. His remarks focused on the universal values that connect military personnel across national boundaries and the importance of recognizing service and dedication wherever they are found. He spoke about his own military experience and how it had taught him to appreciate the sacrifices made by soldiers of all nations in service to their countries and their ideals. The ambassador then did something that surprised everyone present. He approached each guard individually and thanked them personally for their service, not just their response to his salute, but their daily dedication to representing their nation with honor. The personal nature of his gratitude moved many observers to tears, including several veteran military personnel who understood the significance of such recognition from a foreign officer. Roberts and Mitchell, speaking briefly at the conclusion of the ceremony, expressed their appreciation for the ambassador's original gesture and their pride in serving a nation that valued international cooperation and mutual respect. Their words were simple but heartfelt, reflecting the genuine emotion they felt about being part of this historic moment. Their families beamed with pride as they watched their sons represent British military traditions with such dignity. The ceremony concluded with both national anthems, performed by a military band that had been assembled specifically for this event. As the music played, Victor and the guards stood at attention together, their shared military training creating a moment of unity that transcended nationality. The sight of foreign and British military personnel standing together in mutual respect provided a powerful visual symbol of the cooperation that the week's events had fostered. Media coverage of the ceremony was extensive and universally positive, with news outlets around the world featuring the story as an example of how individual actions could contribute to international understanding. The photographs and video footage captured moments of genuine emotion and mutual respect that resonated with audiences far beyond the military and diplomatic communities. In the weeks that followed, the embassy reported increased cooperation from British officials and a noticeable improvement in the tone of diplomatic discussions. The positive atmosphere created by the ceremony continued to influence interactions between the two nations' representatives, demonstrating that symbolic gestures could have lasting practical effects on international relations. The story became part of the training curriculum at several military academies, where it was used to illustrate the importance of military courtesy, professional judgment, and the diplomatic impact that individual soldiers could have through their actions. The incident proved that moments of genuine respect and recognition could create positive change that extended far beyond their immediate participants. Victor completed his diplomatic mission with unprecedented success, earning praise from his superiors for his innovative approach to international relations. The ceremony and the cooperation it had fostered became a model for future diplomatic engagement, demonstrating that military traditions could serve as bridges rather than barriers between nations. The simple salute that had started everything remained a powerful reminder that respect, honor, and mutual recognition could triumph over political differences and cultural divides.